Greetings, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Bird City Biz. Thank you for joining us today. I have a special guest for all of us. It's Kari Schwear. She's joining us from Richmond, Virginia. Kari, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Veronica. So happy to be here with you.
Thank you for joining us. And Kari is a special friend. I met her through a great program that is hosted by Miss Forbes Riley. She has, I remember at one point, Kari was my accountability buddy. And when I heard her story and how powerful her mission is today about her company, Great Tonic, I thought to myself, I need to share this with the world because regardless where you are, this is going to serve you. And her mission is just helping others and adding value. Kari, tell us a little bit about you. How did your journey started serving others? Because you've been in different industries. You've been in real estate. You've been in the medical industry. So tell us how we got to Great Tonic.
Oh, gosh. Well, yes, I've been in a lot of different industries, 7 different careers, multiple jobs. But it started, my desire to help others really began when I was in the medical field. And I worked for a plastic surgeon, is where I first started. And I stayed in the aesthetic world for about 9 years. And just walking through the journey with somebody as they're kind of reinventing themselves, whether it was facial surgery or body contouring or breast implants or whatever, just watching that transformation unfold in front of my eyes, seeing somebody with no confidence go to having confidence and really watching them turn into this beautiful butterfly was really something I enjoyed. And that continued for many years. I started a cosmetic practice for a family practice and then just grew that. Then went to another plastic surgeon's office and managed that as well. So it's just been a really awesome journey. Then, of course, real estate, who doesn't want to help somebody find their dream home? And then the latest job before I started my own business was working at Porsche and helping others realize the dream car that they've always wanted. So it's been an amazing journey just to be a part of someone's life through that process.
That's beautiful. Did you ever plan to become an entrepreneur?
No. No, it's sort of unfolded. It's such a great story. And I'll briefly share. So I really found myself unhappy for so many years, even though, from the outside world, I really appeared to have it all together. I checked society's checklist of the metrics that we're supposed to have in order to be happy. The nice house, the nice car, the nice husband, kids, blah, blah, blah. But I was not happy inside. I felt like there was something missing. And because of that, what really helped me get over that was my love of wine. I found myself drinking wine every single night. And then it became a problem for me, not in a sense that I was physically addicted or that I had a serious problem or severely abusing, but I found myself in what I refer to as the gray area of drinking. And I realized that my whole life I've been in this gray area, whether it was how I was feeling about myself, my low self-confidence, where I was professionally, in my marriage, in my relationships, in my friends, with my friendships. I just felt like there was something more and I couldn't put my finger on it. So I ended up working with a coach
Oh,
after I quit drinking. I went the traditional route of AA and it was not a good fit for me. It's a great program, but it didn't work for me because I was in this gray area. I didn't identify as being an alcoholic. And therefore, I just didn't feel it worked for me. So I worked with a coach after quitting drinking, and it was his guidance and his direction for me that he planted a couple seeds for me. He said, Kari, I think you're going to be a coach someday. I think you're going to start your own business. And I think you're going to share your story with the world. In which I responded, no, no, and heck no. And here we are just 3 years later. And that's exactly what has happened. So it's been an unfolding. I believe that I was called to do this work. I believe that God's plan is the plan and my plan is just a plan. And what I thought, when I was working at Porsche, I'd be there forever. When I realized that I was meant to do what I do today and how that all came to be, it's been an incredible blessing and an awesome journey for me.
and I love what you are helping us to see right now because 2020 was definitely something that nobody expected. A
Yeah.
global pandemic, nobody even planned for it. I don't think there was an emergency plan in place in any industry for a biological attack. And I think mentally and emotionally, we all were under a lot of, and we still are, right? Under a lot of
Mhm.
stress. And as far as coping mechanisms, I mean, it's easier right now to maybe go to the pharmacy or somewhere and try to
Mhm.
have something to numb us. But as far as
Yes.
coping, what are the strategies that, or what are the tips that you would want us to implement or take into consideration in order to have our emotional health back?
Yeah, such a great question. Thank you for asking. That's really the crux of everything I do is looking at inside, having the awareness of why we're actually reaching for something, whether it's alcohol in my case, or it's smoking marijuana, or it's staying in a toxic relationship, or it's overeating. I mean, fill in the
Mhm.
blank. We all have our self-sabotaging coping strategies that we do. It could be avoidance, it could be not taking action. It could be a number of things. And we have to look inward and say, what is it that is causing me to feel this way? Because the actual thing that you're doing is not the problem. Drinking wasn't my problem. My problem was much more deeply rooted. I needed to find out why I felt like there was something missing in my life, why I felt not good enough, why I felt like I couldn't measure up. And that was my own story. And honestly, almost every client I work with, they have their journey and their story. And a lot of times it is the things that we're telling ourselves, it's the narrative that we are repeating quietly inside of our own heads. And when we can get really quiet and start to listen to that voice in a way that is beneficial for us and not in a non-judgmental way, but when we can start to identify what it is that's causing the thinking, that's when we can start to make those behavioral changes. So some tips I would have to share with the audience is whenever you feel yourself getting overwhelmed or stressed, the best thing you can do is stop. You just want to say the word stop, and you want to acknowledge what it is that you're thinking. Like, what is the story that you're creating in your mind? What is the story that you're telling yourself? And ask, is it true? Is it really true what I'm thinking about in this moment? Because 9 out of 10 times the answer is no. Because is there always something that could be true? Yes. So we need to take a moment to stop and acknowledge what we're thinking about. In other words, we're taking a pause. And after we do that, we want to really bring ourselves into a place of calm. And we can do that by breathing. And when we take good, controlled, deep breaths, we can move ourselves from this heightened, crazy state that we're in, or this negative state of mind that we're in, into a nice, calm state. We can do this simply by breath, by stopping, acknowledging what we're thinking about, and breathing. And then we want to embrace where we are. Because you know what, Veronica, a lot of us have not been taught on how to sit with our emotions.
Mhm.
When we don't feel good is when we want to escape it. So knowing that it's okay to not be okay is crucial. If you can sit with the feelings of not feeling okay and knowing that you're going to be all right through that, it's just an experience, it's just a moment. And when we can embrace that and really understand that, then we can move to the next step, which is to redirect our thinking. We want to redirect and reframe and refocus on the original thought. So in this case, I'll give you a live example. What I just shared with you, by the way, is the Saber Method. It is my own proprietary methodology that I use with my clients. And it's a way to take them through those times when they feel triggered or they're having two incongruent thoughts in their mind. It's like the battling back and forth, or the angel and the devil. We call that cognitive dissonance.
Hmm.
When we can quiet that by using Saber, stop, acknowledge, breathe, embrace, redirect, when we can do that, we'll always come into a place of calm and control, and we're able to redirect something to better service. So let me give you a live example of what this looks like. I quit drinking 5 years ago yesterday. As a matter of fact, I celebrated my 5th year without alcohol yesterday.
I saw
And
your posting. It's a
yeah,
beautiful posting.
thank you. Thank you. It's very exciting. It's a big milestone, and I'm so happy. I just feel very blessed. So about 2 years after I quit drinking, it was well about 18 months after I quit drinking, I went into the grocery store and I was going just to pick up some fish for dinner. And there in front of the seafood counter was all these wine bottles. And it happened to be one of my favorite Chardonnays that I used to drink. And I
Hmm.
had a very bad day at work. This is when I was still at Porsche. It was a stressful job. And I had a bad day. And so the old familiar pattern for me was stressful day. I'm angry. I'm hungry. I just want to get the heck home. And all this is going on in the back of my head. And I walk into the grocery store and I see this huge display of wine with
Hmm.
my old favorite of Chardonnay. So what do you think happened? Well, I'm
Calling
human.
your name. It was calling your name.
Calling my name. I could feel that struggle. I could feel me wanting it. My mouth started watering. Like literally, I was salivating over the thought of having this wine because it was an old familiar pattern.
Mm.
So without even know, I didn't have the Saber method at that time, but this is how it developed. I said, "Stop, stop, Kari, stop." And I looked at my thinking and I asked myself, "Do I really want the wine?" No, I didn't want the wine. I really didn't. Then acknowledged my thinking for what it was. And I
Mhm.
asked myself, is this really true? No, it's not really true. I was looking at it saying, wow, that's an old familiar pattern. I recognize that pattern. So just by saying stop and acknowledging what it was I was actually thinking about, I naturally took a couple deep breaths, which brought me into a place of calm. And when I could calm myself down and I could really rationalize my thinking at this point, I embraced that moment. I'm human. It
Yeah.
was an old familiar pattern. And then I had a redirect to something that was going to better serve me. And that redirect was I'm going to go get my fish dinner. I'm going to go pick up some club soda and cranberry juice because that's what I like to drink. And I'm going to go home. And I
Mm.
made that new decision. So that's a great, great tool to use, the Saber method, anytime you feel like you're stuck in that. But a lot of this comes down to just not wanting to feel bad. And when we don't want to feel bad, we want to numb ourselves. And when we feel stress, we want to run from that stress. And so, my invitation for you today, whoever's listening, is to be okay with not being okay and sit with the emotions and examine it and use Saber. Walk yourself through that process, and you'll begin to see just by asking yourself questions and taking the moment to stop, to pause and reflect before you act will really help you.
Thank you. That's such a beautiful share. And I'm pretty sure many people can relate with that. I can relate with that, having those old habits that are so engraved and sometimes difficult to identify exactly how do I feel. Like you were
Yes.
saying, you had the sense of, I want this wine. It's one of my favorites. But in reality, there was something else in the relationship with the stress, right? Which I
Yes.
think sometimes we don't know how to understand our own body, our own how, physiological response. It kind of creates a lot of them negative impact to our body, to how we think. And let me ask a question about how important is our thrive, the people that we hang out with when we are trying to get out of the gray area.
Oh gosh. Well, that's a big portion of it too. So what holds people back from seeking any sort of help or assistance with their negative coping mechanisms that they're using, like drinking, is because they're so afraid of what others are going to think. How could I possibly go to a networking event and not drink? How could
Mhm.
I possibly not be a part of going somewhere that you know isn't aligning with your values, for an example? It is so important to know that you are the average sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? We all know this quote by Jim Rohn, and it's true. So you are this average person of the 5 that you spend the most time with. So when you take a moment to examine, who are you spending time with? Are they building you up? Are they edifying you? Are they helping you grow and expand as a person? Ask those questions. And if the answer is no, it may be time for you to start surrounding yourself. Now, this can feel also very constrictive. Like, how am I going to do that? You can't get away from family, right? We don't have a choice there per se. But what we do have a choice in is protecting our energy. So this is another tip that I have is really protecting who you're spending time with, number one, and also what you're allowing in. And I'll give you an example of this. The news. Is there anything positive in the news? No.
Create your own news.
No. The news is very degrading to us as humans. I mean, without getting into any political views or any like, who cares? It doesn't matter. But when we watch the news, it's all negative. And so when we have things coming into our minds that are negative, we're going to lower our energy level. Our energy level is going to be sucked dry. It's like if you're around somebody who is a Debbie Downer or somebody who's always complaining, that's
Mhm.
going to suck you dry from their energy. We are all energy, everything. This bottle of water is energy. Everything around us is energy. And when we can learn to protect ourselves, and it's like I refer to them as containers. Maybe you've heard this term before, but it's like having your own container of things that are important to you that are non-negotiable. So a non-negotiable for me is to make sure that I'm doing my everyday effort equals expansion exercises. And those are things that I do on a consistent basis for my evolution and my growth and to protect my energy. And some of those are working out, journaling, doing breathing exercises throughout the day, saying gratitude, having those gratitude moments, saying affirmations out loud, taking cold showers. These are
Mm,
all part of the things that I do on a daily basis that help build me up. So protecting your energy is another really good practice to do, and watching who you are surrounding yourself with.
I love it. And I can relate in corporate America, the way to socialize and network is always after the office hours, which will be in a
Mhm.
happy hour, right?
Yes.
And the culture, it kind of makes it even more challenging to set apart because, especially for those that are new joining a company, joining a team, right? They don't
Mhm.
want to be left behind because many of the relationships are built after work. So let me ask you a question. If I was a new entry level or I'm joining a new team and I'm going in a happy hour, how would I be choosing my drinks? Just the ABC, or how I'd be savvy protecting myself from getting into the trap of becoming a passive alcoholic friend?
Yes, that's such a good question. And here's the thing too. How many times for those that do drink, right? By the
Mhm.
way, about 50% of the people who drink alcohol may be in the gray area. That's a huge amount. When you think
Mhm.
about everyone that drinks, that 50% may be in this gray area, that's a huge number. So, first and foremost, it's okay that if you identify as being in the gray area, that's where I was for years, right? And it's okay. It's a great place to start asking questions. Question the drink. We want to start questioning our relationship with alcohol. So remember, question the drink, because you're just going to
Mhm.
question it. Like, why am I drinking? What is the benefit for me? But if you're new and you're going to a networking party at a new company or whatever the situation is, first and foremost, how many times have you had too much to drink in the past and then you regretted it?
Mm.
Right? We've all done that. I've drunk texted people before. I've ruined relationships over my drinking, right? We've all done things like that. When you are new in a company, especially, you want to be in a controlled posture. You want to make the best first example. You want to make sure that what you're saying and you're remembering the conversation and you're fully present for the conversation. You can't do that once you start drinking alcohol. Alcohol works in the fact that it helps relax us, and it also helps to provide liquid courage. But when we have too much of the liquid courage and it does relax us, it also lowers our inhibitions. And
Mm.
sometimes we say things that we later regret, or we act in a way that isn't truly us. And so I would invite you to have the confidence, because here's the other game changer is the tide is starting to shift, meaning there are more people that are becoming mindful of how much they're drinking. And what I'm being told quite frequently is that there is a renewed respect for those that are choosing not to drink. There are
Mm.
so many professional people out there, very successful people, that do not drink at all because they know that they will lose their competitive edge, especially in the workplace. So by choosing to drink, and gray area drinkers, it is a choice to drink alcohol. So choosing to drink, you're actually running a risk. It's almost as if you're driving intoxicated, right? You run a risk when you drink and then you drive. You run a risk when you drink and you get into a conversation with somebody that you want to make a good impression on because you're not fully capable of being at your best self. Because again, it changes our brain, it changes us in a psychological way as soon as we have that first sip. So to stay in control and stay powerful and to have a leg up and to beat the competition, it is in your best interest to be proud that you don't drink. And if you're really worried about what others might think, you can order something like a club soda with a slice of lime. They'll think you're drinking something. You can ask for a non alcoholic beer. You can ask for a mocktail that looks like a drink. I mean, I'm the queen of that, right? Every place I go. And by the way, if the restaurant doesn't have anything on the menu, just ask. The bartenders are always happy to make you something, or they might have a non alcoholic beverage like a beer or something that they can offer to you so you're not drinking. So there's so many ways that you can do those workarounds and it not even be an issue. And that's
Yeah.
the big thing too, Veronica. If you don't make a big deal about it, nobody else will. Because here's the newsflash. Really, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're drinking or not drinking. They just don't. And if they say something to you, they need to look in the mirror because it's more about them than it is you.
I love that. I definitely love that because it's standing up for what we want and at the same time being able to create our own habits. Because I've been in those situations where for years I've been invited to a happy hour and it was harmless, but then I felt that I was going against my own values, what I wanted to do, because maybe I wanted to go to the gym right afterwards, or I wanted to wake up early. And then just because I fell in the trap, I end up doing something else. And
Yeah.
let's define that area, because you mentioned at the beginning, somebody who is an alcoholic versus someone who is in the gray area. We talked about the mindset, right? Being conscious about the thoughts, but how would I realize that I'm in the gray area, that I really need to reach out for help and start building my healthy relationship with alcohol?
Yes, another great question. So somebody, by definition, somebody who's in the gray area is somebody that is more than socially drinking. Okay, let's define that. There's four types of drinkers. You have somebody who's a teetotaler or
Hmm.
an abstainer, a non-drinker. I'm that. The
Hmm.
second drinker type of drinker is a social drinker. Now, a social drinker can drink now and then, it not be a big deal. They're not thinking about it. They can easily say no to a second, third, or fourth drink. They can go weeks without drinking. It just not be a big deal in their life. They have the occasional mocktail, or the occasional cocktail or glass of wine or beer, or whatever, and it's not a big deal. Then you have this wide gray area, which encompasses a ton of drinkers. And within that gray area, you have multiple levels, you have different shades. It's a huge spectrum. And then you
Hmm.
have somebody who is severely abusing. Let me just throw a pin in this really quick.
Sure.
The term alcoholism and alcoholic is slowly starting to go away. They're really replacing that with alcohol abuse disorder.
Mm.
Alcohol abuse disorder has three categories: mild, medium, and severe. Now,
Mm.
somebody who we would consider alcoholic would be severely abusing. In the definition, it's somebody who is both physically and psychologically dependent on alcohol. So when we think of somebody who is severely abusing, as somebody who cannot go a day or two without drinking. It's somebody who, if they did quit cold turkey, they might have some residual effects. They might have the withdrawals. They might have the shakes. They might get the
Mm.
DTs. They might have a physical reaction. They need the alcohol in order for them to function throughout the day. And then so that's somebody who's severely abusing. They're drinking a lot of alcohol. They have to drink a lot to even get a buzz anymore. So this happens over a period of time, which is why the gray area is a slippery slope, because
Mm.
if you can be, you can be a gray area drinker and not drink every day. You could binge drink on the weekends, for example, or you can have those 2 glasses. This really comes down to the personal relationship that you have with alcohol. And let me be clear, when you're drinking, you are forming a relationship with the substance.
Mm.
What does that substance mean to you? Because it's really a relationship. And so when we start thinking of it as that, like, are you thinking about drinking? Are you planning your meals around what you want to drink? Are you
Mm.
already figuring, like, I got to go to the store because I ran out of the vodka and I need more? Are you already planning the restaurant that you're going to go to based on their wine list? I mean, if alcohol is becoming like this
Mm. I see.
this forefront for you, this is like caution flag. You're in the gray area.
Okay.
Right?
Wow.
There's not a set amount. It's not, I'm not here to say if you drink every day, you're in the gray area. If you drink 2 drinks a week, blah, blah, blah. Now, the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism does have a guideline for what is considered moderate drinking. I don't like this. I don't like the
Mm.
guidelines because it's almost uh, it's almost giving someone permission to drink moderately when you hear what the guidelines are. So the guideline, I'll share them with you.
Wow.
The guidelines are for women, it's no more than 7 standard drinks a week. For men, it's double that at 14. And a standard drink, by the way, is 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces for regular beer, 8 or 9 for like a craft beer, and then an ounce and a half for hard liquor. But
Wow.
if we get really clear, I don't have a glass up here, but if a regular wine glass, if you look at a regular wine glass, 5 ounces is about this much, but
Mhm.
we're pouring like 10 ounces. That was my one glass.
Mm.
So, let's get honest. How much are we actually pouring? But it's so much more than that. I only bring that up because they have this moderate number out there. But again, who cares? This is about how you're relating, you yourself. Like, how are you looking at alcohol? How are you looking at it smoking weed every night? How are you looking at the prescription medication because you can't handle a few things? I'm not saying you should be on medication. Hear me on that. But I'm saying start to get curious about why you're doing the things that you're doing to help you cope with some of the stressors you have in your life. There's so many better modalities. And, everything that I teach, whether it's one-on-one or in my group program, it's all about structuring and understanding why it is that you're thinking the way that you do. And let's try to reframe that, because let's face it, we've all habitualized ourselves into a new pattern, and those patterns are not serving us. So we just have to reframe those patterns and disrupt those patterns that we're used to doing. Like for me, it was coming home every night from work and pouring my glass of wine and drinking my wine. That was my habit. It's just what I did. It's just what I did, And so I had to break that pattern. But it was more than that. It was more about than just stopping. It was more about, why am I thinking this way? What is causing me to feel this way about it? And I had to get really serious about working on me. That's why this is so much bigger than something else. And the gray area, by the way, encompasses, and I'm moving away from drinking here on this, gray area of life in itself could be staying in a relationship that you don't love. It can mean you're stuck in a job that you just hate and you don't feel fulfilled. It can mean that you're struggling with something internally and you're not living at the highest potential that you're capable of, but you just don't know how to get there. This gray area of life covers so many things. For me, my story was drinking. It was also my unhappiness for years. But we all have a gray area somewhere in our life. And so it's like getting really crystal clear on what that is, how we close the gap, and how we can get to where we want to go. That's
Wow.
really what it's about.
That's amazing. And working with you, how do you take us on the transformational journey to have a better relationship, but also to become high performance?
Yeah, another great question. So it really, well, it depends who I'm working with. If it's a one-on-one client, it's a whole different ballgame with my one-on-one clients. I start them off with a deep assessment. And this assessment's based on neuroscience. And we get really curious and look into how they're cognitively thinking. We look at some of their motivating traits and their behavioral traits, and we're able to see that person for what they are and how they're made up. And then that helps me really coach them in a high level performance way, which affects their work life and their relationships and their behaviors and all the things, all the things. And I walk them through that process, but that's the first part of kind of the journey with me. And then every week I meet with them, and then every other week, and we really look at some of the things that are causing some of the stresses. We start implementing new ways. We create new ways of thinking. We work on disrupting those patterns that I mentioned and really zoning in on what they want. So most of my one-on-one clients are really high performers. They're high achievers. They check all the boxes like I did in life, and they're just not happy. There's just this hole that they're trying to fill, and they're filling it with all these other things that aren't exactly helping them. We can have all the money in the world, but it's never going to fill a hole. So that's how I help one-on-one clients. Now, my group coaching is mostly centered around alcohol. However, most of my group students and clients have all said to me, wow, this has been so much more than I ever could imagine, because I thought I was going to learn how to say no to a drink. And I came out learning so much about myself and life and how I could apply all these principles that you taught us. And I can apply this in every area. So it's a great program. So it just depends on the client, which program they're in, whether it's in my group program or if it's a one-on-one client.
I love that, because not only that you have a tribe that will support you, but at the same time it's having these difficult conversations. Because let's be honest, sometimes we don't seek out for help because we are afraid of being judged or being questioned, especially in the work environment, right? We want to make sure people see us as the perfect person ready for promotion, but we're not. Like, we are humans, and we just need to find our true self. And I know right now you're also working on a book. Can you give us a sneak peek of your upcoming book?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, it's not going to be out for a little bit. It's going to be a little bit about my methodology and how I help others, and a little bit of my own story. I have, quite the backstory in itself. Some childhood trauma. Went to 12 different schools in just 9 years. I mean, I've been through the gamut. I've been married 32 years. Long-term marriage, still married, very happily married, but not always. We went through our rough patch. So I have a lot of life experience and so forth to bring to the table. So that probably will be for a little bit yet, but it's definitely on the table, and I'm working through it slowly. There's pardon me, there's other things that are really more pressing for me at the moment.
Okay. Do you have a program coming up? I believe there is a webinar that will start in the next 2 weeks.
Yes, 2 weeks from today, as a matter of fact, on August 30th, I'm running a free class, and everyone's welcome to join. It is called SIP Happens, SIP. So not a cuss word, but SIP Happens, the truth behind why you drink. And honestly, we can just fill in the blank. It could be SIP Happens, the truth why you're smoking weed every night. SIP Happens, why you're staying in a toxic relationship when you really need to find a way to get out, right? So we could just fill in the blank. But that is happening on the 30th at 7 p.m. And I think, yes, there's a link to it, which is at greattonic.kartra.com/page/SIP Happens. You can register there, and it will be recorded. So if you can't make it,
Oh, nice.
at least register so you can get the details. And that will eventually lead into the next group program, which will be starting just a few days later. And that is a 60-day program, and that's called Try Dry. So that is a great program. I'm happy to tell you, Veronica, that 100% success rate I have with my clients.
Oh
I
my God.
promise them that they will indeed improve their relationship with alcohol within that time frame with me. And I'm now putting a guarantee on it. So they will get their money back if they feel like they have not achieved that. Of course, They have to show up to the coaching calls and they have to be active and going through the modules and doing the work, but there is a guarantee on it. So I'm happy to report that. It's really going to
And
be awesome.
I can second that because Kari is not only someone who gives her 1,000%, but she gets ready. She's a go-getter.
Mm.
She puts all her energy, soul, and love into what she does. And I can assure those that are listening, you're not going to regret. Reach out for help. Kari is going to help you in the transformational journey. And Kari, before we wind up our conversation, for those parents that are going through a hardship mentally,
Mm.
is there any tips that you might be able to share today?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry with my throat all of a sudden. Parents have it really tough right now. I mean, with COVID has really done a number on us emotionally, on a connective level, and then now we have the stress of our kids, and we're feeling the stress from the kids. I do want to say something that I feel is so important to parents, that your kids are watching you. Your kids are emulating you. And it is so much responsibility when we hear that, especially if you have little ones at home. I'm talking before the age of 7. Everything that you say and do in front of your children, they're absorbing and they're learning that as truth for them. It becomes what they know because they only know what they know. So they're learning from you. And I share that because it is a responsible duty of yours as a parent to really pay attention on what and how you're saying things to your kids and what they're learning from you. That's really important. The behaviors that you do, they're learning that. So there's that. But I say that with so much love because if you are finding yourself in a position right now where you are taking on the stress of the world and you're not sure like how to navigate all that, first of all, you're not alone. I mean, most everybody has stress. I have stress. I'm not perfect. Oh my gosh, far from it. We all have our stress, but it's learning how to use that stress in a positive way, to take all that energy that we're getting from this negative stress and turning that into something that is going to serve you and serve the greater good for you. And focusing on you first is going to be the most important thing. Because if you're not well, if you're not in a good mental place, and if you're using any substance or you're avoiding things or you're just turning a blind eye to it, you need to get to a place where you can feel strong for yourself and pour into you, invest into you. And when you do that, you then can be everything you need to be for your children, your workplace, your colleagues, everyone around you, but you need to invest in yourself first. It's just like we all hear it on an airplane. The flight attendant will say, when the oxygen mask comes down, put it on you first. Why is that? We need the oxygen first. We need to fuel ourselves first before we can help others. So I would definitely recommend just looking into how you can better improve yourself. That can mean working with a coach. That could mean going to see a therapist or a counselor. But it doesn't mean that you're weak. If anything, the people who seek out coaching, for example, are the ones who get the most in life because they are pouring into themselves. Every successful person I know has a coach. I have a coach. I always have some sort of coach with me. Right now it's a business coach. But we all have different areas of expertise. So whatever it is that you're working on or that you want to work on, seek out a coach that you resonate with, that you bond with, that is several steps ahead of you, that can take you the path that they've done. There's so many coaches out there, not all of them are good. So take your time discerning over who you feel the most connected with, and trust the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And one last question. Can you share your hacks for a better life? How does Kari start her journey and maintains her creativity? Do you have any rituals? Do you have anything in particular? That's something that I love to learn from all my guests.
Yes. I love that question. So I mentioned it earlier. Part of what I recommend to my clients, I call it everyday effort equals expansion. And when we do things on an everyday basis, it really helps us grow. If we just do a few things, even if it's just a tiny bit every single day, but we're consistent, that consistency will pay off big time. So some of the things is, again, pouring into yourself. What does that look like for Kari? Well, I will work out. I will meditate. I will journal. I will say affirmations. I have my affirmations right in front of me, as a matter of fact. I will pray. I spend a lot of time in prayer. I will also take cold showers. I end my showers in cold water. I don't start them in cold, but I end them in cold. There's been a lot of proven benefits on why that's so important. I take time to protect my energy. I don't watch the news. I'll read it. I'll read some news. I'm not ignorant to what's going on, but I don't absorb the news or anybody's personal opinions on that. I also protect my energy with who I'm hanging around with or I spend time with. I'm very careful with that. So I do my own thing in terms of, or I read. I'm constantly learning. I'm a constant learner. So it's either reading or listening to a podcast or something to really fill and fuel my mind in a positive way. Always pour into yourself. The more you can pour into yourself on a daily basis, you start to expand. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to become a higher version of ourselves every day. If we can just do 1% better each and every year, we're going to get there. So we just need to keep pressing forward and putting in the effort. That's why I call it everyday effort equals expansion.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kari. It has been an honor having you today. And honestly, you just giving us so much information about how we can start making a tangible change into our lives and how we can become a high performance in a like fully way, right? It's not like one area of our lives. It's like everything because it's the core. So how can any person that is interested can contact you? We're sharing your website, but is there any way that they can DM you directly?
Oh yeah. If you're on Instagram, it's gray_tonic is my Instagram. I check it, but I'm not super on there a lot. LinkedIn is my jam. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I'm the only Kari Schwear. It's like so crazy. I'm the only one that has that name, which is so crazy. I guess that's a good thing. Just DM me. Just DM me. I'm very quick at responding and I'm very happy to chat with you or talk with you at any time. So you could just DM me and we could set up a time to chat if you want to go that route. If you are interested in the webinar, that's the best way to kind of get introduced into my world and see how I, teach, if you will, and coach. That's a great way to kind of preview me in a deeper way. So sign up for that if that's of interest to you.
Thank you so much, Kari. Once again, it has been a pleasure. Kari, she is the founder of Gray Tonic. It's something that will transform your life. We're sharing all her different contacts. And please reach out to her. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your time, Kari. Until next time. All right. Bye, guys. It has been a pleasure.